She may look sweet and gentle and nice, but underneath, she's granite and nails.
Seeing Sonja Henie in the movies, reading about Barbara Ann Scott in Life magazine, or watching Peggy Fleming on a grainy telecast all the way from France, a young girl could easily reach the conclusion that her skating heroes lived impossibly glamorous lives. In reality, the few who achieve fame in the sport did it by dedicating their childhoods to training in cold ice rinks, mostly in obscurity. One move that every female skater learns is the layback spin, which was first performed by Cecilia College. But Cecilia wasn't naturally nimble. Informed by her coach that she was too stiff, she was sent to the London suburb of Brixton and a contortionist named Miss Lee.
Miss Lee had been in the circus. However, my mother thought it was a good idea.
Cecilia spent the summer of 1935 working with Miss Lee. Each morning, Miss Lee tied a rope around Cecilia's waist in order to stretch her back.
I can assure you it wasn't my idea of pleasure. Nevertheless, at the end of the summer, I was doing a back bend. I did a back bend. And so, but each time I had a lesson, it would break all the little blood vessels at the top of my eyes. Every single day.
The layback spin, a maneuver that appears effortless. Only skaters understand the time and tenacity needed to perfect even the simplest move.
You see this performer or athlete, and it all looks very glamorous. But there's a lot of hard work that goes with that, and a lot of things that go on everywhere, inside your head, inside your stomach, that we hide. Oh, it finds its way out in various ways. I ended up with a bleeding ulcer about 2 years after the Olympics. Really, there was a code of conduct, the unwritten rules. Certainly you had to behave as a lady. You weren't allowed, you weren't supposed to swear and kick the ice and throw temper tantrums.
There's a feeling of having to be perfect. Sometimes not even the skating. They can tell you, that costume doesn't quite fit with the music. Maybe if you change the color or shorten it. If you're a swimmer, nobody's picking on what you look like or what your bathing suit looked like.
Some skaters loved the public adoration that the glamour of the sport provided. Others felt hindered by the gender stereotype.
I always considered myself an athlete. Listen, it hurt when you fell on the ice. But there was always that element of showtime. It's not a team sport. You're out there alone. There's no place to hide. You make a mistake and everybody sees it.
It was very much of a more formal and social world than it is today. It has to do with being an upright, presentable champion that everybody felt that they could look up to. These were skaters and people who were responsible, elegant, beautiful athletes, and they presented themselves in impeccable fashion, every one of them.
Looking good was important. But in the end, a pretty costume could only get you so far.
Well, I was always jealous of the other skaters that had more money and had prettier things, but I thought, well, I can't fix that. I'll never have that. But what I can do, I can be a better skater. I can have a prettier body. I can spin faster. I can jump higher. I can work harder. You need that, inner guts, and you need that, strength of steel underneath all of it to make it look effortless. That's the part of the athlete in us, because our sport is about athletics and it's also about art.
It's the dual nature of the sport that makes it so compelling. Only female skaters are expected to excel as athletes and embody each generation's ideal of a lady. To do both to perfection is to become a champion.
Figures were a discipline that started in England when you skated on little patches of ice.
Before figure skating fell in love with jumping, before the only measure of skating elite was time spent in the air, figure skating was about figures. Literally tracing shapes into the ice as smoothly and as accurately as possible. Figures originally comprised 2/3 of a competitor's score. The school figures were practiced ceaselessly, discussed, debated, judged accurately or not, and cursed as many a freewheeling skater's downfall. What they never were was seen by the masses.
As far as audience, there was very little audience at all. For the free skating, sure, but for school figures, not much.
If free skating gave you the rush of unbridled movement, the figures were about as liberating as standing still. They were performed with the skate planted firmly on the ice, an etching made with gem cutter's precision by the edge of the blade.
You're alone with your thoughts, and you're competing against yourself. It's how you place your thoughts with your feet, and how the two work together.
It took a lot of work, but the greatest pleasure in a figure skater's life is to do as close to perfect a figure as you can. And it's a thing of beauty.
When it's well done, there is no scratching, and there is no crunching. It's just a whisper.
You had between 11 and sometimes 13 judges.
They'd be standing there like pillars.
So close, you can almost feel them breathing down the back of your neck.
My foot would just shake like this.
It's a little bit nerve-wracking.
You had to have tremendous concentration to do a decent figure.
When you finished the school figure, you skated off, and they would go and examine all the tracings.
There are two edges. You skate on either one edge or the other. You don't skate on two. They're looking to see if you touch the other edge slightly, which will show in a double tracing on the ice.
They have to get right down on the ice, almost with a magnifying glass.
And they'd take scars or little brooms and brush the snow off. And then they'd walk the circles. And if one circle was 10 paces, then the next circle had to be 10 paces.
Also, it's the shape that you make it with, the delicacy.
And then they'd do the width of the circle, and that had to be 10 paces. And then it had to be lined up.
You get very nervous.
Each skater traced 3 distinct shapes with her right foot, then 3 more with her left. The compulsory figure scores awarded by each judge were added together to yield a total. Judging skating is a subjective exercise. No one crosses a finish line or races against the clock. But the figures, those minute tracings, all but performed in secret, were particularly subject to judges' manipulation.
Judges certainly had their favorites, there's no doubt about it. Whether it was a question of countries or not, I don't know. But I know that certain judges disliked certain people.
There was great discrepancy on what is more or what should be more important. It was never written in a rule book that, it's better to have round circles and traced patterns than clean turns.
I think that figures were used for, a certain reason, and it was the one way it was easy to manipulate the sport.
Well, the coaches, what do they know? They do not know. I was supervising for, I get a little vehement at this point, I supervised for 30 years the performance of judges doing figures. And I reviewed those results year after year after year, and invariably the judge was better doing the figures than they were the free skating.
In the first part of the century, judging was done in secret. It was said that a judge's best tool was his eraser. In both figures and free skating, a judge could award a high score for one skater, then see someone better and change his mind. After 1936, judges were forced to display their marks in open judging. The skaters could see them, and the audience could too.
There was no kiss and cry in those days. It was outdoors, and you hoped it wasn't snowing or raining. We had 9 judges, and they would hold the marks up the old-fashioned way. And that's how you'd see.
Holding up those marks out in the open put the judges on the spot.
Well, the judge is out there to do a job, and his job there is to be fair and equal to the skaters, and the best person wins. Use all your knowledge of the rule book and your experience. Try to get the people in the right order that you want them to come. That's tremendous pressure. I've been out there in the cold, and the sweat's been pouring right off my forehead.
Even when the judging was beyond reproach, which will always be debated in figure skating, the figures were weighted so heavily that the best free skater often didn't win.